Minister Gordhan, thank you so much for your time. It's really a pleasure to have you in studio with us. So, I want to start here because you have spent most, if not all, of your political career, with the ANC, as a part of the ANC. And many people are saying that this election coming up on May 29th could be the most consequential election for the ANC since democracy. What is your expectation?
That the ANC still, I think, represents the best interest of virtually all South Africans, that it would climb the wave, so to speak, of optimism and come out above 50%. And once again, be given an opportunity to continue to build democracy in this country, to build our economy, and to ensure that the inequality and the divisions in our society are attended to in the ANC way, which is bringing people together, making sure that we build social cohesion, and at the same time take on the difficult tasks of reimagining on the one hand, but also reconstructing the economy.
But Minister, we have seen ANC losing support, despite the achievements that you're mentioning there, to a number of parties. Does that not concern you?
No, well, we are a democracy, so we must have anybody who wants to have create a party and meet the requirements of our electoral system is free to actually do so and to appeal. But the final test is, some of the parties have been in government in one or other place, either at the local government level or at the provincial level. And the question is, what have they actually practically delivered? Secondly, the achievements of the ANC are unmatched by any other organization in terms of the transition from apartheid to democracy, building democratic institutions, creating a democratic constitution, and continuing to strengthen the institutions of democracy. Yes, there have been mishaps along the way,
right,
which we have to learn from and correct our way. Otherwise, we lose the next election.
But which party do you think presents potentially the most challenge to the ANC's majority support?
None of them come close to over 20% or so.
But which party would you say is maybe the closest, based on what you've been seeing?
None of them, actually.
Really?
Because none of them have the kind of appeal that the ANC has across the board. Each has an appeal in a particular sector, but none across the board.
Many people, though, are looking at the economy. It's stagnated. And your role in particular has been focused on state-owned enterprises, right? And we've seen those really, I mean, as one person said, deteriorate over the past few years under the ANC. I mean, how do you respond then to the criticism from people who say that and look at the economy and use that as evidence?
No, there was a period, which we're very frank about, when we had what we call state capture in South Africa, where people from within, individuals from within the ANC, engaged in all kinds of corruption, and they decimated these organizations. In the last 5 or 6 years under President Ramaphosa, our task has been to recover these institutions, to rebuild them, to make them a vital part of our economy again, and that's the work that we've been doing.
But they're not.
No, they are. They're beginning to. Repairing something that's broken is a tough job. But, for example, Transnet went through a very difficult period, but its recovery plan is beginning to pay dividends now, in the sense that volumes leaving our ports or entering into South Africa through containers, all of the numbers are ticking upwards as far as that is concerned. Eskom has been undergoing massive changes in terms of creation of a transmission company, and with this new piece of legislation that's been passed in Parliament, there'll be even further changes through to the South African electricity industry as well. And we've been very fortunate that the kind of work that has been going on in Eskom has given us no load shedding for quite a period.
What do you say, though, to people who are skeptical about that, especially leading up into the election, that, you know, this is not going to be sustainable going forward?
No, I think that if we continue to do the right things, which the Eskom colleagues are doing, we will be able to sustain it. But at the same time, we've also been frank that more megawatts need to be added, and that is where the opening up of the generation side of the Eskom business and the investments from the private sector, both by industry, by mines, and by households, has also made a difference and taken off a bit of load from Eskom as well. So we are going into, in the next 5 or 10 years, a very different kind of future for the electricity system in South Africa.
Do you regret anything at all about how Eskom was handled over the past few years, especially when you look at how it contributed to the economy?
Well, I wish state capture hadn't happened.
But I mean, under the past few years, as the Minister of Public Enterprises, I mean, are there things that you wish you could have done?
Yeah, I wish that the National Prosecuting Authority had locked up more people who were guilty of damaging the organization, because there are still individuals who are interfering, and they need to be dealt with.
Still to this day within Eskom?
Yes.
So then how can you confidently say that things will change if there is still mismanagement that is happening?
Well, the balance is swinging towards the good people, towards getting the right things done, and more and more the law enforcement agencies are identifying the malcreants within the system. So with the change in balance, we can move forward with some optimism.
Do you, you know, we're talking about Eskom. Andre de Ruyter, of course, left Eskom. You were supportive of him. Also, when we talk about Transnet, there was Portia Derby. I mean, do you regret putting them at the helm, especially because they decided to leave?
No, you know, human beings are human beings because they appear to do the right things at certain points in time, but they also have frailties at other points in time. And when change is required, we must be bold enough to make those changes. So in the case of Eskom, Mr. de Ruyter walked at the right time, both for himself and the organization. And I think what we have now is a much more stable leadership, both in the board and at an executive level. And you'll see more changes coming in that regard in the coming weeks and months as well.
What should we expect?
No, most a seasoned executive team around the CEO that will be able to support the CEO and the board in terms of the kind of direction that I've actually painted as well. Similarly, there are changes that have happened on the Transnet side and in other institutions as well. And all of that needs time now to embed themselves and be given an opportunity to go forward.
What's your expectation for when we'll actually see the full implementation of Eskom being divided up into its various
well, the first piece of work has been done already in terms of the transmission company. Excuse me. But I think the next phase of the transmission company is to get projects off the ground, identify them, find out how we will fund them, and get the first 1,000 kilometers of transmission wires out of the 14,000 that we actually need. And I think we have a very competent board there that will take us forward. So in the next 6 months, you'll hear, I think, the right kind of indicators about the way forward.
You don't see a return to stage 8, stage 7 load shedding?
No.
You think those days are behind us?
We only got to stage 8 once or twice, firstly. Secondly, I think we must distinguish between theoretical possibilities, which the systems operator is required to put forward to the country, and the actual occurrence of some of these things. And hopefully we are way past that.
Hopefully. That's what a lot of investors are waiting for. I also want to ask you about SAA, because I know that was also something that was very important as you were our Minister of Public Enterprises. But the deal did not end up going through. I mean, what kind of partner is it going to take to actually see SAA succeed? Because right now many people are looking at it and a bit confused how it moves forward.
Well, the deal didn't succeed in the past because a new set of valuations were done of the assets of SAA, both as a business and in terms of various other assets, including property, which means that that new valuation meant the structure of the deal, so to speak, needed to change, which the other side didn't find comfortable. So going forward, I imagine government will look for further opportunities to bring in an equity partner.
Do you know of any discussions that are happening right now?
Not in any concrete sense, but I'm sure as we cross this barrier into the new administration, that will begin to happen.
How high on the priority list do you think? Because I know you said policy continuity is very important with this next administration. Should SAA's privatization be number one? Should it be Eskom? Should it? I mean, what would you say?
Well, there's no privatization. It's the involvement of the private sector. So on the Eskom side, you already have the private sector on the generation side. And as I pointed out, once the transmission side gets off the ground, you will have the private sector contributing at that level as well. But Eskom as an entity will still remain 100% state-owned. So there's some creative financing and structuring that will take place as we go forward. Similarly, on the SAA side, we're looking for equity partnerships. Now, the previous deal was a 51-49% deal. The future administration will reevaluate that and see what's in the best interest of both SAA and the partner that we actually bring on. So what we have is an indication of flexibility on the part of government as we go forward.
And are you optimistic that that will go through?
Yes, you have to be optimistic in South Africa.
Yeah. And I wonder, Minister, I mean, you're talking very positively about the past few years of being Public Enterprises Minister, but the numbers are not showing up in the economy, right? And investors are waiting to see something to stimulate this economy. I mean, when are some of these changes that you're mentioning going to actually show up in terms of economic growth in South Africa?
Well, I think like most economies, you've got to get the investment climate right, which we are beginning to do. The investment conferences that the President has been convening have always been moving in the positive direction in terms of numbers. So increasing investment in infrastructure, in industrialization, and supporting black industrialists on the one hand, but also I think the key area of growth in the future is going to be support to medium-sized businesses in South Africa, because historically small and medium-sized businesses were not allowed to grow under the apartheid system. And so what we have is a highly concentrated economy, and new ways have to be found to get more people economically active, but also make the economy a much more inclusive one as we go forward. But secondly, I think from a global point of view, there needs to be a different take on the African continent more generally, including its biggest economy, which is South Africa. In other words, just take off those skeptical glasses and look at the opportunities that are here, not just from a point of view of exploiting natural resources, but also the potential to grow in many other areas, and where both sides can emerge with a win-win outcome.
So you think this is an investable economy still?
Well, it is on the one hand, and on the other hand, as you know, there's a lot of noise around in the global economy, lots of uncertainty. Geopolitics is also I think introducing complexity in the global environment, but also on the African continent as well. So it's within that mix that I think business has to find the courage on the one hand, but also the level of optimism that's required.
What about the public sector, though?
What about it?
The government. What is? I mean, you're talking about what the private sector has to do. What about the public sector?
The public sector in South Africa has been quite involved. So if you look at institutions like the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the Industrial Development Corporation, and even from a fiscal point of view, the kind of support that small and medium-sized businesses have been getting, but I think they'll be getting a lot more as we go forward. The kind of support that industrialists get. If you take the auto industry, for example, which is a big part of our manufacturing sector, they've had all sorts of benefits for decades now. And that's attracting more and more investment from various role players. So if you take Ford and the massive investments they've put in the Gauteng area, VW has made some recent announcements as well. There are firms from China that are looking at South Africa as a possibility. So those are all positive indicators that the right kind of synergy between the public and private sector, both in terms of incentives on the one hand, but investment on the other hand from the private sector. If you get the mix right, you'll move in the right direction.
Minister, finally, as we mentioned, you're retiring after this next administration is inaugurated. And what is next for you? Because you've spent most of your life, I presume, in politics. I mean, what is it that you want to do? How do you still contribute to this country moving forward?
Well, some of us have been activists for a very long time. So that spirit of activism doesn't just disappear. And there's still a lot of work to do to create a better society. And government is just one form in which one can contribute. And hopefully there'll be other forms that I will find, which are less strenuous.
What are you eyeing, though? I mean, what would you say is the focus?
Nothing in particular, but to also find time to look at the past that we come from and look at the possibilities of the future, and continue to inspire people to think in a creative and optimistic way.
All right, Minister Gordhan, thank you so much for your time. Really great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.